Well, in 1972, I left the States on a, to travel the hippie trail from Europe to India. And it's been my goal for several years. I heard about the great full moon acid parties at Goa on the full moon in the wintertime. And for several years, I had this fantasy that I really had to do that, to be a hippie or something. And so my travels, through Afghanistan and then through North India, and finally got down to Goa in February of 1973. And I had taken a course in meditation about 2 months before that in Kathmandu, and I've been practicing meditation a bit. But I still had this fantasy that I wanted to experience this full moon party at Anjuna Beach. So I was sitting on a pile of sand away from this main kind of area where a lot of people were sitting around, and they were starting up the amplifiers and the rock music, and Led Zeppelin and all this type of acid rock music was starting to play. And I was just practicing my evening meditation. It was just about the sunset time. And I was sitting there just watching my breath, and then before I knew it, there was somebody standing in front of me. And so I kind of opened my eyes, and this classic hippie type of guy, just wearing a little loincloth with long, blonde hair and holding a little bag, he just held out something in his hand. And it was like just some kind of connection, and I went like that. And he put it in the hand. And I didn't even really consciously know what was happening, and I put it in my mouth, and almost immediately I started getting off on this acid. I mean, that's what I was. And and within a few minutes, I mean, it must have been some pretty good stuff, because within a few minutes, I felt like I was almost floating, and all this music then started, and it was wafting over the waves. I was about 200 yards away, and heard this music and Led Zeppelin and this other kind of music, and it was like a Pied Piper, and I just felt myself getting up and walking along the sand in the direction of this music, and it was like I couldn't even hardly feel my feet hit the sand. I was really getting off on this acid, and I went over where all these people were sitting around, and they were smoking chillums, and this music was playing, people were dancing, and I, just sat down there, and I was really stoned, and people were passing chillums around. I guess I did take one and took some tokes on it, and was really getting off. And then later on in the night, I was walking down by the sea. This was at Anjuna Beach, at Goa, and walking down the beach, and the waves were coming in. And water coming up to the feet, and everything was like crystals, and I thought to go in the water, and so I went into the water, and it was like I couldn't even tell the difference between my body and the water. And I got in, and before I knew it, I was submerged underneath the water, and I kind of hardly even knew it, because I couldn't feel the difference between my body and the water. And all of a sudden, some common sense came to my mind, and I said, you might drown. You better get out of this. And so I was able to come up, and I realized, well, I better get out of the water. That, because I could have drowned, because I didn't lost the sense of the difference between my body and the water, or what was happening. And so I went back out on laid down on the sand, and kind of just mellowed out. But that was a very a dangerous experience. But so the LSD can break down these barriers between the body and just the feeling of like being the pure energy that's floating around. And even in that experience with the music scene with the smoking, I just felt like my consciousness was the same consciousness as was going in and out of the chillums, going in and out of the dancers. And of course, later on in meditation, I learned that, well, you can also reach these kind of states of consciousness through meditation, but then you're in control of it. And now you also have the wisdom to understand what is happening, and you're not apt to do something totally foolish. Because another time I had taken acid in Germany and was in a nightclub in Munich, the Blow Up Club. This was back when I was in the army in 1968. And before I knew anything about the Dhamma or anything. I was just a GI on a weekend leave, and I got some acid from some hippies in Schwabing, in Munich. And I was on this balcony, and I was really getting off this acid, and I was looking down, and all these people were, dancing below, and I felt like they were dancing on like feather pillows, and things were going like this. And I thought, I'll jump off on that, think I was just going to sink down into some big thing of feathers. And so I started to climb over the rail, and some guy would grab me, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing?" And I kind of came to my senses and realized, I was about ready to jump, and it wasn't a feather pillow; it was a hard dance floor. So these are some type of experiences. I know other people have had these experiences, but through my own personal experience, I saw the dangers of taking LSD, especially when you don't know what's happening to you and you lose touch with reality. But that won't happen when you meditate. And when you've trained your mind methodically through the development of concentration and mindfulness, then when you enter and experience these altered states, you know perfectly well what is happening, and you don't have any fear from that, and you certainly wouldn't do anything foolish that would endanger your life.